is.
It's 7 o'clock on the Family Station, Love and One, time for the Morning Watch with host Stokely Marshall.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Alrighty then, well, coming up in the Morning Watch today, the Bank of Jamaica is now independent. What difference will this make for the economy? In the second watch, we talk about, is Jamaica racist? Well, we'll find out. And in the feedback question today, what are your thoughts on the thought that Jamaica is a racist country? Leave your comments online, right here on Facebook or YouTube, or send us a WhatsApp 876-997-3125. This morning's I quote, Christians would only be heard if they get involved. S. Marshall. Christians would only be heard if they get involved. This is Love 101. We take a break. When we come back, Stokely will join us for the Morning Watch.
It has come to our attention that persons are doing various activities and saying that they are doing so on behalf of Love 101. This is to inform our listeners that Love 101 does not sell phone cards, neither are we asking persons to collect money on our behalf to help others who are in need. Love 101 also does not require your personal information for you to claim prizes. If you have won a prize and have received a call, please listen carefully to the questions being asked and do not give out your personal information. If in doubt, please call our offices immediately for verification. 876-968-9596 or 876-968-9597. Always check the facts. Let wisdom guide your everyday activities. In times like these, many will find creative ways to make money from the vulnerable and those with a good heart to give. Stay safe and continue to make it. Love 101, the family station.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Joan Pinckney, counseling psychologist. We are all facing difficult times in one form or another, and I know that a listening ear, some wise counseling, and spiritual guidance are necessary to help us face those times. That's why I'm here. I'm the counselor, your counselor, on Love 101 FM, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 10 to 11 p.m. You know you can call on me. I will listen and more. So let's talk about what's bothering you, anything at all. For the month of September, our focus on the counselor will be on our teens and children, how they have been coping during the pandemic. I'll have some team guests to share their experiences. Now, I know the program starts at 10, so teens, get permission from your parents to join me. I look forward to hearing from you. Tune in, listen, call in, text or voice message, Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 10 p.m. I'm Dr. Joan Pinckney, counseling psychologist, ready with a listening ear, right here on the family station, Love 101 FM.
For I am standing.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are now in the main watch. Shivani Blair, sir. Morning, sir.
Good morning, Stokely.
Sorry for, well, there was a technological issue on my end this morning while we are starting late. I have resolved it. And the S Marshals, I quote, you don't know which S Marshal that is, sir?
Is it you?
It is yours truly, sir. It is yours truly. And the producer liked it and included it in the script. It had,
Well, congratulations. You made it to the I quote list.
apparently, sir. Apparently, sir. Apparently, indeed, indeed, indeed. Yes, I had a frozen screen this morning, and for some reason, it would not be unfrozen. So I'm now on. Yes, we are in the main one. The Bank of Jamaica was officially declared independent as of April this year. And what does that mean for us as regular persons? How does it affect our economy today and into the future? We have online to have a discussion on this very important topic. Mr. Dennis Chung, well known and very experienced financial analyst. Mr. Chung, good morning, sir. How are you?
Hi, good morning. How are you? I'm good.
Great having you online. Now, first of all, Mr. Chung, as the topic indicates, we are looking at the whole matter. The Bank of Jamaica is now independent. Now independent. What is the Bank of Jamaica, firstly, for the benefit of all the listeners? What is the Bank of Jamaica? And what is its connection or relationship with the Ministry of Finance?
Well, the Bank of Jamaica is really the central bank for the country. The bank of the bank, a bank for banks. Number one, but number two, as a central bank, it is responsible for ensuring that it properly regulates monetary policy, because the how monetary policy is controlled will determine what happens, for example, to things like the inflation rate, the exchange rate, because if you put too much money out there based on the amount of productivity that's in the country, then you get inflation, for example, because the quick explanation is that if you're producing 100 units of something today and you have $100 in the economy, then you can say that the price for simplicity is $1 per unit. However, if you put $200 out there and you're still producing 100 units, then the price moves to $2 per unit. So they play a very important role. So when you talk about the Bank of Jamaica moving interest rates, it's really to regulate the amount of money that's in the economy, to control things like inflation, which is the primary target that the central bank has. And in our case, the issuing of money to the market from the NIR also controls, for example, the exchange rate so that it doesn't run away. And the high stock of NIR that it keeps also protects our balance of payment position. So those are some of the primary functions that the BOJ serves.
Very interesting. And prior to April of this year, the Bank of Jamaica, well, it is now independent. So do we take it to mean that prior to this year, April, it was not independent? In other words, what was the situation before April this year, 2021, and what is the situation now? And what difference does that make materially to the average person on the street?
Well, before April, it means that, not being independent means that it has, it was basically under the control of the Ministry of Finance. Okay. And what you don't want is that you don't want your policy makers for fiscal policy controlling monetary. They need to be separate. So in the US, for example, the Fed is independent of government. So government can, for example, say, well, listen, I want to have more money in the economy to make things like it look like it's booming for a little while. So say to the BOJ, okay, you go and print money, because the BOJ issues money, because that can cause long-term problems with inflation. Short-term, it can help in terms of politics. but it can cause long-term problems. So in the 70s, for example, when we were having our crisis, one of the things we did is printed money, right? And I mean, you know that when we started, I think in the start of the 70s, our exchange rate was one where the Jamaican dollar was actually stronger than the US dollar, right? By the end of the 70s, with the printing of money and all of that, we were looking at a weakened Jamaican dollar significantly in percentage terms. So you used to have the ability of the Ministry of Finance to control the operations of the central bank. With an independent central bank, that ability is removed. So you really have the separation of monetary and fiscal policy now. And that means that the economy, things like inflation and productivity, essentially that comes from how you put money in the market, can actually be controlled.
I see. So in terms of separating the two, the thinking is that you want to reduce government interference. Is that the general thought?
Yeah, you want to reduce government interference. You want the bank to be independent. So let's take an example, for example, with the Integrity Commission or the Auditor General. Those are independent arms. Can you imagine if you had the Auditor General's department controlled by government, right? Then a lot of the things that we hear about would not be coming out.
Understood.
Right? Yeah, so you want to have it independent. So the Integrity Commission, the Auditor General's Department, those places need to be independent. The Police Services Commission, because it is the independence of those institutions that's going to create the check and balance that we need on government policy. And you know, government policy is many times influenced by politics. So you want to move that. I mean, one of the most recent ones that we have is the one about the fiscal rules, right? So there's an independence around a certain amount of independence around the fiscal rules, which Parliament has to rule on, right? So I mean, there's a certain debt level that we can't go beyond, and Parliament has to give that approval. It is no longer the government, which was the case before. So all of that has now been set up that way.
So now, based on what I have seen, a board has, there is now a board in relation to this now independent Bank of Jamaica. How will that board operate in relation to monitoring or addressing monetary policy and ensuring its continued independence from central government? Yeah,
well, that board will have to ensure, just like any other boards, that the person is responsible for day-to-day operations, this is really a governor, a Bank of Jamaica, that he is doing the right thing, right? And that he's running the operations properly in relation to, you know, what are the objectives that we want to achieve. Now, very importantly, just like any other public body or any body, if your board is not sufficiently qualified, you're going to have a problem, right? And therefore, a part of that independence is not only ensuring that you have independence on paper, but certainly in terms of operations and how you select your board, it's important. One of the problems that we have with our public sector governance, for example, is that we never really have had a sort of standard for directors. We're trying to put that in place now with our corporate governance framework. But you'd have seen that we've recently seen, you know, issues with corporate governance arise. The latest one is, for example, AAJ, right? Airports Authority of Jamaica, right?
Yes.
I mean, even though it is set up that on paper that the central bank is independent, to be effective, we have to ensure that certain standards are followed. Because if we don't do that, then the inefficiencies will creep into the system again. So, you know, you have to set up certain committees as a board, you set up certain subcommittees that you operate through, right? To ensure that you're following the operations, is following the policies and the guidelines, right? The audit committee, for example, is one that under the Public Bodies Management Accountability Act is maybe the only committee that is named. It's a very important committee. Other people have a finance committee, a corporate governance committee, and that sort of thing. So the framework is in place, but then the BOJ will have to operationalize that framework for the effectiveness that we want.
Well, hold on to some of that, Mr. Chung, because we are going to take a break now and come right back. Stay with us on Morning Watch, please.
This is Love 101, the family station. It's 7:16.
Buying a home? Score big with a Sagicor Bank mortgage. It's easy. Find your property, apply for your Sagicor Bank mortgage, get your keys in no time, and you're home. Get a competitive interest rate, a line of credit up to $2 million, which you can use for any purpose, including home renovation, purchasing new furniture, or maybe installing a solar power system, plus a special rate on home insurance. Score big with a Sagicor Bank mortgage. Apply for yours today. Call 888-SAGICOR. Conditions apply.
It's time to take your home somewhere unexpected. And at Active Home Center, it's our job to help you do just that. With our wide range of home finishes and on-trend styles, you'll find a great selection for your space. Shop tiles in different styles, contemporary bathroom fixtures, kitchen and appliances, the latest in furniture, lighting, and so much more. Visit our showroom at 84 Constant Spring Road or online at ActiveHomeCenter.com. Your one-stop shop for home finishes. Active Home Center. More savings, more choices.
There is an easy way for insurance coverage today with no line in your way. All you have to say is
Genac.com. Everything you have is everything you have. So keep your assets covered and save 10% off your insurance when you renew by visiting Genac.com. You don't need to go into a branch. You can do just about everything online at Genac.com. Remember, smart insurance saves. Who knows what tomorrow brings? So future-proof everything.
insurance on the go. Trust the brand that you know.
Genac.com.
All you have to say is Genac.com.
General Accident Insurance Company. Future-proofing tomorrow.
If you got the first dose of the AstraZeneca and Pfizer vaccine recently, you may now be due your second dose. Please check your vaccination card and make your appointment for your second dose. Remember, you are not fully vaccinated until you have received the 2 doses. Visit moh.gov.jm or call 888-1LOVE to make your appointment today. Let's get vaccinated and get back to life. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are in the main watch. We are looking at the Bank of Jamaica is now independent. What difference will this make for the economy? And our guest for this segment, we have noted, well-known financial analyst, Mr. Dennis Chung. And Mr. Chung, you have been really helping us to understand, in a nutshell, what does this all mean for Jamaica in terms of the independence of the central bank. Now, sir, there are 2 areas I'd like you to help us with before we wrap today. Now, one of the changes in relation to the central bank being independent is that the Bank of Jamaica is now not permitted to lend money to the government, 1. And 2, the average person is supposed to have a better sense of where inflation and interest rates are going forward. And for the benefit of the listeners, one can take a look at an article written by Kalila Reynolds on the matter. It is online, dated the 10th of May, 2021. Now, can you assist us with those 2 points, Mr. Chung? Because the central government can no longer be loaned money by the Bank of Jamaica. Enlighten us on that firstly, sir.
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially what that is saying is that government cannot say to the BOJ, listen, I need some money. I have managed my fiscal affairs poorly, and now I need the BOJ to bail me out. by basically giving me some money, right? However that money is coming, is it going to be printed? Is it going to be money loaned from reserves that they have? And that's essentially what we're saying, that government does not have that capacity anymore to say to the BOJ, listen, I've messed up my fiscal policy and I've created this huge deficit on my account. I need some money to borrow from BOJ. No, it doesn't have that ability anymore. And that is very, very important, because that is what creates havoc in the market, right? When your fiscal policies are not working properly, as we have not had them working properly since maybe about the 1960s. And what we've done is basically just gone and said, listen, we need some money, create some money, right? Now, when you create money like that and put it into the economy, it causes inflation, right? It causes money to run after the US dollar, for example, right? So what government is more forced to do now is manage their fiscal affairs properly. So if the government is not being productive, then it's going to have a problem, right? Now, one of the things that government can always do, as we've seen in the past, is tax us more, right, as a country. But that also has a problem, because if you tax too much, then you become uncompetitive as a country, right? And you find that productivity is going to fall. So, I mean, the greatest growth that we've seen in this country in recent times has come from at a point when taxes have been falling. You know, we've had 1.5 being put back in terms of income tax exemption. We've had reductions in tax, and productivity has increased. Or I should say, growth has increased. The only thing that has caused a problem right now is the COVID environment, right? So it creates that check and balance on government, an additional check and balance, because with the fiscal rules in place also, there's a check and balance, right? And therefore, it's very good for the economy for us to have this sort of situation.
Differentiate productivity from growth for us. I saw you do it a moment ago. You had indicated increased productivity, and then you replaced it with the word growth. Can you separate the two for us so that we can understand what you mean? All right.
So productivity has been falling in this country since 1972, with the exception of about 3 years in the early 1980s. Now, what productivity is that if I invest $100 in a factory, and that $100 that I invest produces 5 units of something, and somebody else invests $100 in a similar operation and produces 7 units of that, it means that they are more productive. Now, that productivity might come from labor productivity, it might come from capital productivity, but they are being more productive. Growth, on the other hand, is the value that you add. So your income your value produced might increase, right? So I can produce that same 7 units, right? But that 7 units that I'm producing might mean that I invest another $20. So I might not be more productive, but I'm growing. And that's the difference. So we have been growing because we have done things to produce more and more, right? But we have not been more productive. And that is why our growth rate has been very low. Because you can grow, and there will naturally be growth, right? I mean, if you produce 5 things today, then as a base, you can easily move to 6 things, right? It's much easier. But if you are being productive, you might be able to move to 10 things. And that's the difference. That's the difference that we've not been able to get as a country, because our labor productivity has been falling. Now, what happens when productivity falls, and especially labor productivity, and this is what we've been seeing in Jamaica, is that even though there has been growth happening, that growth is happening more because of capital, not because of labor.
Yes.
Income levels fall, real income levels.
Yes. Yeah. So you may have put in some new equipment and you can produce more.
Right.
And so there is more growth in earnings, for example, but the average, the contribution of each person, for example, working in the system or in the factory, in the business place, their individual contribution hasn't really increased.
Exactly. So they're getting less money in real terms.
Yes. And if that individual productivity was increased, the growth would even be much more.
The growth will be more, which is why we struggle to get over 1 to 2% of growth in the country, while other countries are growing at 5%.
Now, the other thing I would like you to help us with before we wrap today, with the independence of the Bank of Jamaica now, the average person will be better able to have a sense of where inflation is going and where interest rates are. How does that help the average person? Someone wanting to purchase a property to live in or to use as a business place, someone wanting to purchase a motor vehicle to run as a taxi. How does this all help them on a micro level, Mr. Cho?
Well, if you can predict what inflation is going to be, then you can plan more, right? If you can predict what interest rates is going to be, you can plan more. So if you can predict what interest rates is going to be, like remember right before we had the FinSac crisis,
yes,
interest rates just flew up, right? So people were borrowing money, right? And a lot of them were silly that they were using their overdraft to finance their operations, but rates moved up to over 100%, right? Now, there's no way that you can properly plan and you don't know what is going to happen to inflation and interest rates. So if you are, for example, even on a personal level, buying a motor car and you are getting a rate of 7% now, if you think that rates are going to move or you don't know what is going to happen to rates in the future because of lack of confidence, you might say, listen, I'm not going to buy the car, right? And then economic activity stops there.
Understood.
Right.
Money how do you think an independent Bank of Jamaica will better able manage things like interest rates?
Well, just by using effective monetary policy. So the fact that government can call them anywhere and say, listen, I need this money, right? You know that with a properly constituted board and proper governance, they are supposed to properly manage monetary policy, which in effect has a proper management on inflation and the exchange rate.
Right? I see.
But then again, it comes back to how you operationalize it. Because as I said, even if you put the independence down on paper, if you don't have competent people running it, you're going to have a problem. And therefore, the competence of that board is always going to be important to look at.
So more or none, they are not really even 6 months yet into this independence. It was April, and we are now about the middle thereabouts of September. So we wait to see what happens, Mr. Chong. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, and I mean it's difficult to judge. Well, it's a difficult time now because of the COVID situation and because they're managing in basically an economy that has not been economically active. Because I mean, 3 days of being open is not, no country or business can survive on that.
Understood. Well, we will definitely pick this up at a later time, Mr. Chung. We hope to have you back because maybe, as you said, a little bit more time and then we can see where we are going from here. We want to thank you for your contributions, Mr. Chung. Always very insightful, always very knowledgeable, and you explain the things in a way that the average person can understand exactly what you're saying, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Please stay with us, listeners. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Now with no processing fees and no down payment, it's time to open the door to your own sweet home. The time by JN Bank is
7:30 on the family station, Love 101.
There is an easy way for insurance coverage today with no line in your way. All you have to say is
Janac.com. Everything you have is everything you have. So keep your assets covered and save 10% off your insurance when you renew by visiting genac.com. You don't need to go into a branch. You can do just about everything online at genac.com. Remember, smart insurance saves. Who knows what tomorrow brings? So future-proof everything.
Insurance on the go. Trust the brand that you know.
genac.com.
All you have to say is genac.com.
General Accident Insurance Company. Future-proofing tomorrow.
Top graduate in English, Shakir Matthews. Yes, I might be a that.
What's new with you? Pat needs to know if your child is starting primary or secondary school so that you can continue to receive your benefits, including a nutritious lunch for your child.
You don't believe you are graduate. You just remember to tell the Pat people about our new school, you see?
Visit or call the Ministry of Labour and Social Security Pat Parish Office. We need to know so your child can grow with Pat.
At Eastern Total Supplies, we fight to provide our farmers with everything they need to keep their animals and crops safe. High-quality feeds for all your animals, from dogs to pigs, chickens, and goats. You'll even find health products such as fertilizers, pesticides, and seeds for your everyday planting. We also have your home and pet supplies covered. Come visit us at 6 William Street, Port Antonio, or Lot 138, Bryan's Bay, Portland. Call us at 993-9778. Eastern Total Supplies, where farming is not just a business, it's a lifestyle.
Munchie!
Yes, Boss
I'm heading out now. Straight to Cars, Auto Montego Bay.
The entire Jamaica is heading to Cars, Auto.
About variety, there. And the vehicle them clean as a whistle, and the price right. A true where them say good quality, best price.
Cars, Auto.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Let's take a look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we have here the Gleaner online. Among the latest news, outrage as Floyd Green, councillor, toast at party to No Movement Day. We also have a Gleaner online. CMO taken aback by cover-up claims in deaths during oxygen shortage. We now turn to the Jamaica Observer. Another reference to this story first referred to the Gleaner. Outrage over video showing Floyd Green, others at social gathering purportedly on No Movement Day. And we have another story here further afield. Let us buy COVID jabs, pleads Africa. And those and many other stories in both major daily newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read for you some of the feedback from our Facebook and WhatsApp question, which is, what are your thoughts on the thought that Jamaica is a racist country? If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM, Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
It's week 13 of 13 inside I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover, and we hit the road again this weekend. Hi, I'm Shavani Blair, your youth ambassador, and we're wrapping things up at home this Friday, September 17th, 7 p.m. at the Rosestone Holiness Christian Church, 3 Bethune Avenue, Kingston 13. It will be live across her platforms too. The I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover is sponsored by University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, fostering leadership and innovation. Shade Purified Drinking Water, drink up, stay cool. The Distinction College, providing opportunities for you. And Chris and Charles. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles. It's the I Love Summer Youth Fellowship Takeover. The final leg this Friday, September 17, 7 p.m. And it will be live on the family station, Love 101. It will be absolutely amazing.
I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, yes. To be a strong man, the integrity man, I am a man.
Are men more likely to commit suicide compared to women? Does his age affect the chance of him having suicidal tendencies? Is it harder to talk a man out of suicide than a woman? Well, we are going to find out about this and more in the mailbox this Wednesday, September 15 at 5:30 p.m. as we take a look at men and suicide, what we need to know, with guest Dr. Donovan Thomas, owner and founder at Choose Life International. That's the mailbox. In recognition of Suicide Prevention Month, inside the program designed for men with guests who are men, hosted by men. Yours truly, Pastor Courtney Morrison and Counselor Kevin Bailey, right here on Love 101, the family station. Monday.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station. As we face this COVID-19 pandemic, be kind and support loved ones during this time. Check in regularly on others, especially those who are affected. Encourage them to keep doing what they enjoy. Share accurate COVID-related information with them to manage anxiety. I am Jonathan Fletcher from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Siobhan, were there any comments in relation to that feedback question or not as yet?
All right. So Cherry from Spanish Town says, yes, some Jamaicans are racist. It's sad because it goes back to the mindset. Sometimes, the upbringing, environment, how one is treated. I'm seeing that comment. Let me see if there's another one. No, only seeing Cherry's comment.
One so far.
Yeah.
Well, maybe as the discussion goes on in the second watch, we'll get a few more. Well, the conclusion or assumption of many in Jamaica is that Jamaica is a classist country or society. However, some sometimes argue that maybe we're not racist, but are we racist in Jamaica? Or is the racism that we have here in Jamaica a little bit more nuanced than in other parts of the world? Now, are we just taking unreasonable and uncalled for offense to everything? In other words, are we saying that we are racist when maybe we are not racist? We have online today to discuss this very touchy and sensitive topic, I would add or say, Mr. Stephen Golding. He is the Universal Negro Improvement Association of Jamaica president. And we have also online Reverend Clinton Chisholm, Christian apologist, author, teacher, and speaker. Good morning, Mr. Golding, and good morning, Reverend Chisholm.
Good morning, my friend. It's been too long.
Mr. Chisholm, Rev, how are you doing, sir?
Me all right, my brethren.
All right. I'm saying publicly here on radio, online, where they can see us, that you were one of my first mentors here at Love 101 FM, sir, in relation to this very program, The Morning Watch, sir.
By the grace of God, I could have helped, and I'm thankful for that.
Yes. Always a pleasure seeing you, sir. Always a mighty pleasure. Mr. Golding, are you with us, sir? We see a sign of him being present, but we're not hearing him. Would you like to unmute Mr. Golding if that is what you need to do? Hope to have Mr. Golding on. Well, we jump right into it, sir. Reverend Chisholm.
Yes, sir.
in the various hats that you wear, Christian apologist, author, teacher, speaker, a man, a human being, what would you say? Is there racism in Jamaica? And maybe you'd even want to help us by defining what we really mean by this racism. Reverend
I was
Chisholm.
going to ask my colleague if he were on to give us a working definition. Mine is that if racism has to do with thinking about and treating a person as less than, simply or exclusively based on the person's race, that term not used, I gather, much in sociology now, ethnic stock, or coloration of skin, In other words, you're treating the person, you're demeaning the person's personhood, and you're treating the person with disrespect and perhaps depriving the person of things to which the person is entitled simply on the basis of the person's coloration. That would be my working approach to racism. And I don't think Jamaica is racist at all.
Interesting you said that, Reverend Chisholm. Mr. Golding, sir, are you with us now? Would like to hear if, well, we seem to be having a challenge. We're seeing his name. Mr. Golding, if you need to unmute your microphone, hoping that he's on the StreamYard space, but for whatever reason, we're not hearing him. Well, Reverend Chisholm, I mean, interesting you said that you don't think Jamaica is racist and you defined racism. Before we get further into the discussion, I want to ask you, sir, the way race is being treated with in this time, you would almost get the impression that racism is one-dimensional. It's only one set of persons who can be racist against another set of persons. Maybe those of a lighter hue can be racist against those of a darker hue. Do you see that as being true, or is it that racism can go either way?
Where you can have inverse racism, where black people can despise and demean their own black people. And I suspect, though I can't say I've read about it, white people or other colorations could do the same. Years ago, when I was doing research on my book, Revelations on Rastafari, I was involved in a discussion on radio. I can't remember which station, no, it's quite a while back, on racism and inverse racism. And on that line was the esteemed Professor Patrick Bryan of UWI, a historian. And I asked him point blank, because part of my book had to do with Afrocentrism and Black consciousness, challenges for Christianity. So I said, sir, do you know of any study that has been done in the Caribbean region about inverse racism, where black people are against their own black people? And he said he didn't know of any. So it might be a view, but it is not documented as a researched view. And I think people may be confusing, okay, somebody has treated you poorly or less than they should have treated you as a black person, but it's not widespread enough to qualify as racism. Maybe an unfortunate soul or, few incidents. I grew up in Montego Bay, Stokely, and Pelican Grid. While I was working as a youngster in my young days in the court's office, we used to go to Pelican Grid, a group of us from the office, regularly, sometimes breakfast, lunch, and or dinner. And we noticed something, that the what do you call them in a restaurant? My brain is probably not woken up fully yet. The people who would serve you in the restaurant at Pelican Grill, they would be very careful about serving the visitors, because it's a tourist area in Montego Bay. They would be careful to serve the visitors first and well. So we noticed that, but we didn't call it racism. We just say, okay, the people are just money smart. They're not getting much money for the service that they provide. And if they presume, or maybe they assume, or they have a reason to say, well, the white people tip you better than the black people, they would serve the white people. But it's just common practical sense. It's not racism. So what we did, we had a concerted policy. When they served us, I would give them more money than they would expect from us. I give them a very decent, sizable tip. And from that time onwards, they realized that black people can tip you well too. So we never got any second-class treatment at Pelican Grill for the years I was in the court's office, 68 to 74, simply because we were tipping them as well as anybody else from abroad who was visiting Jamaica.
Very interesting. I think we may have Stephen Golding. I think we may have Mr. Golding online. Mr. Stephen Golding.
Morning, Stokely.
Great. we are almost upon a break. In fact, I think we are upon a break. But before we head to the break, in a second or two, is there racism in Jamaica? Yes or no?
Certainly. We have to understand what it actually means.
Okay, hold that thought. You are saying that there is
slavery and
certainly
the experience of the institutionalization of slavery. So it exists, and it doesn't matter if it's between black people. Black people can be racist to black people too.
Okay, hold that thought, Mr. Golding. Hold that thought, Mr. Golding.
That was institutionalized by chattel slavery.
Hold that thought, Mr. Golding. We have to go to a break now, but we'll be right back. Stay with us, listeners. Getting very interesting. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
There is an easy way for insurance coverage today with no line in your way. All you have to say is
Genac.com. Everything you have is everything you have. So keep your assets covered and save 10% off your insurance when you renew by visiting Genac.com. You don't need to go into a branch. You can do just about everything online at genac.com. Remember, smart insurance saves. Who knows what tomorrow brings? So future-proof everything.
insurance on the go. Trust the brand that you know.
genac.com.
All you have to say is Genac.com.
General Accident Insurance Company. Future-proofing tomorrow.
Every weekday on Love 101, we give you a time to celebrate your family and friends inside Celebration Club. Call in and send birthday, anniversary, other special day greetings, or just heal up your friends just because. It's Celebration Club, and every first and last Tuesday, it's brought to you by Fontana Pharmacy. Fontana Pharmacy, so good inside. It's a Celebration Club, celebrating families and friends. That's the way love goes. Every weekday at 3:45 on the Family Station, Love 101.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are in the second watch, and we're looking at the topic of racism. And is Jamaica racist? Our guests are Stephen Golding, UNIA Jamaica president, and Reverend Clinton Chisholm, Christian apologist, author, teacher, and speaker. So in a nutshell, to summarize, Mr. Reverend Chisholm indicated earlier that he doesn't think Jamaica is racist. Mr. Stephen Golding is on the opposite side of the pendulum. He says, yes, there is racism in Jamaica. In fact, Mr. Golding indicated it is institutional. Now, we don't have Mr. Golding back online just yet. We hope to have him on in a minute. Oh, I think he's on now. Mr. Golding, are you hearing us?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Now, you were indicating that the racism is even institutional, and you even also indicated that black people can be racist against other black people. Can black people be racist against white people or persons of a lighter complexion?
Certainly.
Okay.
They can. But the point I was making is that given our history, there is no way we can say that racism doesn't exist in Jamaica. We have a history of almost 300 years of chattel slavery. We have to consider what that does to the psyche of a people, what that does to the social fabric of a people. You know, and I heard the Reverend talking about his experience, the entail of it at a restaurant, and then providing a solution saying that they tipped a little better so that next time, so forth. Well, that might be functional, but it is not. I don't think it provides a moral solution of how we deal with this. That's almost as bad as the fact that there were black people who had to buy themselves out of slavery.
Yes, they achieved their liberation, but they should have never have been made to pay for their own God-given freedom. And the fact that they had to do that, is evidence of the racism in society. Our problem was not slavery. Every civilization has experienced slavery, right? The Europeans enslaved themselves, right? Africans enslaved themselves. Asiatics enslaved them. Slavery was a part of civilizations expanding and kingdoms overtaking other kingdoms. What was different in the transatlantic slave was the introduction of a system of chattel slavery, where the enslaved was completely dehumanized and not given their human rights or respected as humans. And if you do that for 300 years, how can you then turn around and believe that because of an act of the British Parliament, all of a sudden there's no racism in your country? We still have children bleaching here. It's because of the effect of white supremacy on their mentality, right? We still have 80 to 85% of the wealth of this country concentrated in the hands of white Jamaicans. That is not because racism doesn't exist. It's because of the institutionalization of slavery, because of the wealth we gained from chattel slavery, and because of the fact that our social institutions proliferated and uphold it.
Very interesting. Reverend Chisholm, any comments to what Mr. Golding just said? I think you were trying to comment.
I don't know personally. Mr. Golding, give me an evidence, a current evidence of racism as you see it right now in Jamaica.
I think he just did, Reverend, but I'll let him respond. I think he just did, Reverend, but I'll let him respond. Mr. Golding, you want to respond to what Mr. Chisholm was just asking?
Well, let's go with what you said, because I did give evidence. The last one being that 85% of the wealth of this country is concentrated in the hands of white Jamaicans.
Well, that's not racism.
How is that not racism?
It is not racism. Racism has to
How do you have a country that is over 95% African descendants, but the wealth of the country for how many years is concentrated in the hands of the less than 15% of the population?
An unfortunate sociological legacy, but it's not racism. How are
you know what? Reverend, I'm going to ask you to pause one moment. Mr. Golding, you were not here with us at the very beginning. I'm not too sure why we didn't have you on quite yet, but we're glad you're on now. Give us your working definition of racism, because I think a fundamental disconnect between yourself and Reverend Chisholm is maybe how you define racism. Give us your definition of racism.
Well, I thought I did that in the beginning also when I explained how it came about.
Sure, but if you can just say
slavery,
if you can say it in a quick nutshell. Yes.
The key word that I used was white supremacy. The existence of white supremacy in our mentality and in our social institutions. The Rev is a fundamental Christian. Let me give an example. When you have a population of over 90% Africans and they go to a religious institution, this is a simple example, and the images in that institution, in its literature, in its books and so forth, are of one particular race, which is not the race of the congregation. That is an example of racism.
I see. That is not what Reverend would be saying.
That's not racism.
It creates in the mind of that congregation an inferiority complex. If you are saying God does not look like he's of your race, does not look like he's of your cultural standard, then that is imposing racism at the most fundamental level, the conceptualization of the supreme deity. That is a product of white supremacy in this country.
Can I ask a question? I'll ask a question here, Mr. Golding. Many Africans in Africa, living in Africa, born and raised in Africa, are worshipping, well, they're Islamic.
Of
they're
course,
Muslim. Yes. So, and the Prophet Muhammad is not a black man. So, do you see that as racism as well? Let's put in that.
Of course, I see that as racist. and they
You
suffer from
do.
white supremacy too. Let me tell you
I
something. In
see.
the ports that were built around Africa that
I see.
enabled the transatlantic slave trade. I don't know if you've ever been to one, but you see the dungeons where the Africans were kept.
Yes.
Right on top of it is where Europe built their churches. So they worshipped in a place while they had Africans one floor below them, defecating on themselves and suffocating. Right? So even showing you that example, if that is the introduction to the religion and to the Christianity that the Africans got, then it is no less it's no less a racist experience than we have experienced.
And
They may not have experienced slavery on the continent, but they certainly
only because of time, Mr. Golding.
Colonization.
Only because of time, sir. Only because of time. What other forms of institutional racism are you seeing? Church is one for you. Any other?
The schools. I mean, they've done a lot of work now in terms of the imagery, but the narrative that we receive from a colonial curriculum is still in there. The fact that we refer to our ancestors as slaves. Africans are the only ones, and because of their experience of chattel slavery, that they have taken on this identity of slaves, so that we speak about our ancestors as being slaves. The British don't speak about their ancestors as being slaves, but they were enslaved by the Romans for a number of years, right? But because of our experience, our narrative doesn't say that our ancestors were Africans who were enslaved. Our narrative says our ancestors were slaves. And you see quite frequently.
Any other institutions? We're running out of time. Any other institutions, Mr. Golding, before we go back to Mr.
Stokely, the banking institution. And how wealth is generated amongst black people. And the piracy and the robbery that went on for Europe, that they were able to build up wealth. But as soon as our people are trying to build up wealth, they're impeded by all kinds of laws that they call money laundering, illegal activity, and so forth. All of it is steeped in a foundation of white supremacy and racism.
Very interesting. Hold that thought, Mr. Golding. Mr. Chisholm, your comments, because we are almost out of time.
The fundamental problem with programs of this nature is that we have to start with clear, defined definition. I said in my view, racism has to mean that you're demeaning and you're despising somebody strictly or solely on the basis of the person's coloration. The example that Mr. Golding has given, with due respect, is not properly definitional. It is descriptional, but it does not come to a definition.
I see.
Racism doesn't have to do with color. Racism does not. Jamaicans have always said that we try to limit it to colorization, and that is why our young people are so obsessed with color that they're willing to bleach themselves, because they don't understand the difference between race and color, right? So racism, as I have said, it is a product of white supremacy. How did white supremacy come about? From the transformation of slavery into chattel slavery, where we began to identify the slave with a particular race. Now we have simplified it to color, but it really goes beyond that if you understand the history of the transatlantic slave trade. The Europeans themselves had children with Africans on the continent, sent those children to Europe. I'm talking about in the 15th, 16th centuries, right?
Yeah.
And had those mulatto children come back and manage the slave force, right? This is not a matter of color. It is a matter of race.
I see. So you're saying both of you clearly are not agreeing, and part of the challenge is that you are looking at the matters from, I would say, different angles. Now, what final thoughts do you want to leave with us? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Golding, and then Mr. Chisholm, because we're almost totally out of time. 10 seconds, both of you. Mr. Golding?
Just basically following up on the last thing I said, that for too long, we have tried to minimize racism in this country as classism or colorism. And it means that we totally ignore its roots the origins of its foundation. And if you don't understand the roots of something, then it's very hard to pull it up or to chop it down.
Have to hold it there, Mr. Golding. Reverend Chisholm, your final comment?
Yeah, the issue of race, I gather, I'm not a sociologist, I gather the term is not even used in academic sociological centers anymore. It's people group or ethnicity. And the visibility of color is why it takes precedence over most other elements of racism. Jamaica is not racist in that sense. We are not demeaning our own people. We are not despising our own people. We might look down on ourselves psychologically. So the definition is key to start any proper discussion, in my view.
I have to leave it there, both of you gentlemen. I want to thank you both for your time, for your thoughts. I know that we didn't agree, but
racism is totally
we are totally out of time. Only 1 second.
Slavery alive. The wealth in the end, or the wealth in the hand of the white, is classism. We need to free ourselves from mental slavery. Yeah.
Okay.
How we take classism?
Thank you, our listeners, being with us. This is a very interesting discussion. Clearly, it will never end, not today. And thank you for being with us as we look at other topical and controversial issues going forward. Visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and other Love 101 FM programs. Listen to the the Love in the Morning, of course, and download our Love 101 app and stay connected to us, the family station, Love 101 FM. And thanks to Kathy Gale, our producer, and to our guests. I am Stokely Marshall, handing back to Love in the Morning with Siobhan Blair.
After 8, and it's time for the program Forward in Faith, brought to you by the Port Moody Testament Church of God.